So here we are, civil disobedience, day 2, and I want to begin by reminding you what we're after, right? Why are we reading this document? And we're trying to get an answer to the question, what do you do when there's an injustice? And in this case, part 2 is going to actually get to the answer more than part 1 ever did. So you can see here, when I say part 2, I mean this is the copy of civil disobedience that I linked to on the Google Classroom. So if you find this actual version, you're going to be suited best because the paragraphs are numbered. Whoever did the website split it into 3 parts, right? And so in this particular part, there's 14 paragraphs, and then you can continue on to part 3. As we're focusing on the second part, as this website has defined it, you are going to be trying to look for the answer, right? What do I do when my government's engaging in an injustice and I want to fight it, right? And the answer is not some of the things we've talked about. Writing a letter to your senator, right? Voting for the candidate that you think is best able to fight the injustice. He's got something else in mind here. And it has to do with, right, what's the best or most direct way to communicate with a government if you're just one lone citizen. Now, as we're reading this, or as you're reading this tomorrow in class, that'd be Tuesday, I also want you to take a look for a couple other things. While you're reading, I'd like you to focus on 3 different literary devices, the first of which is paradox. It's come up in class a little bit before, but just to clarify, right, we're talking about a statement which appears contradictory, but in the end actually expresses a truth. In this case, maybe an example would be the Shakespeare play Hamlet. Hamlet, in speaking about his mother, says, "I must be cruel in order to be kind." Right, and in this case, he's talking about the fact that he's going to have to treat her meanly in order to communicate to her that her relationship with Claudius, her husband's brother, is not good, right? So I'm going to have to get mean in order to end this relationship, which in the end will be a good, right? So on the surface, right, it doesn't seem like you can be cruel in order to be kind. Appears contradictory, but actually expresses a truth. Now, towards the end of part 2 is where you're going to find some things you could interpret as a paradox. So that's one thing you're going to need to look out for as you're reading part 2 in class on Tuesday and into Wednesday. Another thing, right, besides paradox, would be allusion. Right? In this case, allusion is a reference to something outside the literature. Right? This could be something from history, other literature, the Bible, anything like that. Right? In this case, we did have one back in part 1. As far as examples, Thoreau alluded to a gentleman by the name of Paley. Now, we don't really know Paley, but we get enough context, we can figure out what his status was and why Thoreau would bring him up. In part 2, you're going to find also a number of allusions. In this case, really the best way to find them is to look for the proper nouns, right? Just a hint, paragraph 3 is a good place to start there. Now, in this case, right, we've talked about allusions before of Mice and Men. The title of that work of literature is an allusion to a mouse, Robert Burns' poem that we talked about in class. So the idea of allusion can be tricky, but in this case you'd be looking for, right, here's a nice proper noun, Confucius. In this case, Confucius is long dead before the 1800s, but apparently he's got something to say that Thoreau finds applicable to the current state of events. And then lastly, I just want you to keep an eye out for some figurative language. The passage itself is just rich, right? We're talking about metaphors, similes, etc. Actually, if you go back to civil disobedience part 1, right, anything from, well, the men, right, the mass of men, they're actually machines, right, that's a metaphor. Up towards the top, you've got, where does it go here? The government are most allowed trade and commerce if they were not made of India rubber. Okay, they're not actually literally made of India rubber, which is kind of what they used to make bouncy balls out of. And here, right, it's figurative, right? These trade and commerce can bounce over obstacles. And in this case, right, he ends with a comparison, right, a metaphor of politicians, legislators, who are really, nothing better than people who put obstructions on the train tracks. So in class, I'll give you some specifications exactly what I'm looking for as far as how many, but that's kind of a little introduction into those 3 parts of speech.